And now, the dark tale of a doll with a secret. A doll made by two men with only ill intentions. Harold, originally written by Alvin Schwartz, adapted by Madelene Bridgeman, Bryton Howard, Alex Snyder, and Sebastian Longoria.
When it got hot in the valley, Thomas and Alfred drove their cows up to a cool, green pasture in the mountains to graze. Usually they stayed there with the cows for 2 months. Then they brought them down to the valley again. The work was easy enough, but it was boring. All day the two men tended their cows. At night they went back to the tiny hut where they lived. They ate supper and worked in the garden and went to sleep. It was always the same. Then Thomas had an idea that changed everything.
Let's make a doll size of a man. It'd be fun to make, and we could put it in the garden to scare the birds.
It should look like Harold.
Harold was a farmer they both hated. They made a doll out of old sacks stuffed with straw. They gave it a pointy nose like Harold's and tiny eyes like his. Then they added dark hair and a twisted frown. Of course, they also gave it Harold's name. Each morning on their way to the pasture, they tied Harold to a pole in the garden to scare away the birds. Each night they brought him inside so that he wouldn't get ruined if it rained.
How are the vegetables growing today, Harold?
Very slowly!
They would talk to him. Whenever something went wrong, they took it out on Harold. They would curse at him, even kick or punch him. Sometimes one of them would take the food they were eating, which they both were sick of, and smear it on the doll's face.
How do you like that stew, Harold? Well, you better eat it, or else.
It was Harold. I was watching him when it happened, and I can't believe it.
How could he grunt? He's just a sack of straw. It's not possible.
Let's throw him in the fire, and that'll be that.
Let's not do anything stupid. We don't know what's going on. When we'll move the cows down, we'll leave them behind. But for now, we'll keep an eye on them.
So they left Harold sitting in the corner of the hut. They didn't talk to him or take him outside anymore. Now and then the doll grunted, but that was all. After a few days they decided there was nothing to be afraid of. Maybe a mouse or some insects had gotten inside Harold and were making those sounds. So Thomas and Alfred went back to their old ways. Each morning they put Harold out in the garden, and each night they brought him back into the hut. When they felt playful, they joked with him. When they felt mean, they treated him as badly as ever.
Harold, he's growing.
I was thinking the same thing.
Maybe it's just our imagination. We never know.
Singing. But when they had gone only a mile or two, they realized they had forgotten to bring the milking stools. They decided to take the cows down into the valley that same day. When they left, Harold was nowhere in sight. They felt as if they had escaped a great danger and began joking and singing. But when they had gone only a mile or two, they realized they had forgotten to bring the milking stools. Next morning, while they were eating, Harold stood up and walked out of the hut. He climbed up on the roof and trotted back and forth, like a horse on its hind legs. All day and all night he trotted like that. In the morning, Harold climbed down and stood in a far corner of the pasture. The men had no idea what he would do next. They were afraid.
There is really nothing to be afraid of.
After all, what could a doll do?
I'll catch up with you.
Came to rise in the path. He looked back for Thomas. He did not see him anywhere, but he did see Harold. The doll was on the roof of the hut again. As Alfred watched, Harold kneeled and stretched out a bloody skin to dry in the sun.
Loving credits to our actors that we are very, very grateful for. Narrator, played by Alex Snyder. Thomas, played by Dylan Hicks. And Alfred, played by Alice Love. Thank you for listening to this podcast.